Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting. Thank you for taking the time out to come along. You'll see that the room is set up a little different from last time. The feedback suggested that it could be a little bit intimidating, so I hope we've made it a little less that way, but we do need to get the live streaming in, so it's difficult in this situation to make it much different. Tonight we're joined by 4 people who are here to represent the survivors and their families. We have Yvonne, Carol, Mandy and David. Welcome and thank you for taking the time to do the job you're doing. Tonight we've got 2 aims really, and the 2 aims are to agree the terms of reference and to consider the issues that need to be included to appoint and procure a commissioning body. Those are our 2 aims. I hope we can, at the end of the meeting, we can get those 2 issues sorted out. So I'm sure you're aware of the people on my right here, but if you just start, Stephen, and just introduce yourselves as you go around.
Stephen Bentley, Ward Councillor for Edgemond Arkle Magnum.
I'm Councillor Nicola Lowry, I'm the ward member for Ironbridge Gorge.
Nathan England, ward member for Edge.
I'm Hilda Rhodes, ward member for Open Gates and Ketley.
Deborah Mosley, I'm Democratic and Scrutiny Services Team Leader.
My name is Jonathan Eatoff, I'm the Assistant Director for Governance, Procurement and Commissioning.
And I'm Peter Scott, I'm ward member for Newport North and West.
And I'm Suzanne Todd, I'm the Service Delivery Manager for Legal and Governance.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to the agenda. And the first part is apologies for absence, please.
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Tim Nelson. Councillor Nicola Lowry is here and is a substitute.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair, there's another member missing. No apologies for that one.
Sorry, Councillor Karen Blundell also.
Noted, yep. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Everybody happy? Thank you. On to the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of May. Have you had a chance to look at them, and are you happy it reflects the meeting, please? We've all seen them, so if I can have a show of hands from all who were present.
Just make a comment on that.
Certainly, yeah.
Confidentiality statement with signing, is that something that's still being processed, or is that something we've missed? Or?
I think once we agree the terms of reference for the advisory body, we will determine whether or not we need a confidentiality agreement. It just depends on how involved you are in the process.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So all those in favour that reflects the meeting of 22nd of May, please. Thank you very much. Right, moving on. Number 4, the terms of reference. I'll read this out for those who don't have a copy. For the advisory body to agree terms of reference to work to commission an independent organisation, the commissioning body, who will draft a final commission and use that to appoint an independent chair who will establish an independent inquiry. Okay, those are our terms of reference. That is fairly straightforward, I would assume. Any comments from members?
Yeah, one quick one. Are the terms of reference you're referring to being the statement you've just made?
Yes.
So we're going to be discussing terms of reference?
The terms of reference for this advisory body, not terms of reference for the commissioning body. No, we won't be discussing that.
Okay.
Yeah, happy with that?
But can I just clarify, is that just that paragraph where we're not approving parts? Because I'd like to ask questions about the specific part of the specification. That's the next.
That's the next part of the
item.
agenda, yes.
Okay, just to confirm, yeah.
So we're all agreed then the terms of reference are as stated. All those in favour?
Okay.
Excellent, thank you very much. We move on to the meat of the bone, so to speak. Number 5, the process for the appointment of the commissioning body to receive a report of the monitoring officer outlining the process for the appointment of the commissioning body. To this point, I shall hand to Jonathan to give us an overview, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. As members will see, the summary of the main proposals, obviously we've welcomed the survivor representatives and I'd like to extend that as well. To note the process for the appointment of the commissioning body, and to go through and consider in detail the draft specification, which we'll get back to in a minute if we could, and for us to advise on how we propose to move forward on the next steps in the process. What I was proposing to do, if you wouldn't mind, Chair, is to pass over to Suzanne, who will go give you some background on the outline of the procurement process. One thing I would say, just in respect of the document that you've got, there are some references to the advisory body overseeing some of the processes. That was how the original terms of reference were drafted. Those references will be taken out because that's no longer part of your terms of reference.
Okay.
Okay, our fundamental aim is to ensure that this procurement process is conducted in an open, fair and transparent manner in accordance with European procurement rules. We are currently preparing an invitation to tender. That is due to be released on the 2nd of July 2018. It will be advertised on a Contract Finders, which is a government portal which allows suppliers to search for contracts. All government contracts over 25,000 must be published on this portal. The aim of Contract Finders is to provide small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as voluntary community and social enterprises, with easy access to public contract opportunities and to improve transparency. The invitation to tender comprises of 4 volumes. Volume 1 will be the invitation to tender with the instructions within it, the specification, which we'll agree later, the contract and the response document. It will also include an anti-collusion certificate, a confidentiality table and a conflict of interest form. There will be a bidders' day in week commencing the 9th of July 2018. We need to work out the details for the bidders' day, but the aim of this event is to ensure interested parties fully understand the requirements of the contract, and there will also be an opportunity for interested parties to ask questions about the invitation to tender. The closing date for the return of the tenders is the 3rd of August 2018. The evaluation process will end on the 16th of August 2018, and we will announce the successful organisation on the 24th of August 2018. In relation to the evaluation process, the evaluation team will evaluate the tender in accordance with the detailed evaluation criteria and scoring methodology as set out in the invitation to tender. The evaluation criteria will be weighted at 70% quality and 30% price. In relation to evaluation criteria, we are looking at and assessing things such as examples of previous experience of leading similar and sensitive high-profile matters, the tenderer's approach to obtain public confidence in the inquiry, experience of previous dealings with CSE matters, the tenderer's proposal for meaningful engagement with survivors, victims, families and friends, and also key stakeholders including public services and the voluntary sector groups. We're also looking for experience in managing and delivering within agreed timescale, including delivering effective progress reports. We're also looking for the tenderer to provide proposals for successfully recruiting and managing an independent chair. Each criteria has sub-weightings, so there's a very detailed methodology behind how we will weight and score tenders. For each quality criteria, tenders have to submit a method statement detailing their approach. The council will specify the minimum considerations the response should consider. The responses will then be scored in accordance with the detailed scoring methodology between 0 and 5. The contracts will be awarded on the 24th of August 2018 and will commence on the 3rd of September 2018. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks. Thanks, Suzanne. So that's an outline of the process. I wonder if there are any questions on that Suzanne perhaps could help with.
I have one. Having listened to that, I would say within what is being considered for the commissioning body, a number of elements within that are related solely to the independent chair, who should have the authority to go ahead and do any procurements, aids and everything else himself. to bring together the inquiry as we would like to see it. I don't believe it's the commissioning body's remit to have any influence on the inquiry itself.
I don't think we're saying that. So in relation to the procurement process, we're looking for a commissioning body to kind of lead, but not when the commissioning body has a responsibility via the contract to select an independent chair. Once they select that independent chair, then the commissioning body steps back and the independent chair then conducts the inquiry.
Right, I'm comfortable with that statement, but I do think we need to be looking at what we're saying to the commissioning body, because they are going to only commission the independent chair.
It is clear in the documents, and this
Right.
is why we feel it's really important to have a bidders' day so they understand their role as commissioning body. And in relation to what we're looking for from the commissioning body is only experience in recruiting that type of person. They then, when you look at what we want from the independent chair, so experience of dealing with inquiries, etc., we're not looking for those requirements from the commissioning body. That's just for the independent chair to demonstrate those qualities.
Okay.
In regards to, obviously you said the advert will be released and it'll be on contract finders. I appreciate it's a very specialist area and we want to recruit obviously a high calibre of candidates. Will we proactively be going out to approach people if obviously we're not getting it, or just do that anyway as a point of calls? How will we approach it in that way, or will it literally just be putting it out on contract finders and waiting for a response?
Jonathan has quite a lot of stuff to do next week in relation to promoting this.
Okay.
So we are actively contacting organisations and key people that we know that know other people that may be interested in this.
So we'll be using our own networks to publish this as widely as we can.
Right.
So again, we're not ringing up our favourites. We're just saying this is out there. You need to, be aware of it. Please, look at it and see whether or not you're interested.
Excellent. And as part of the actual procurement process, obviously there's a part of the selection criteria that says the preferred tenure evaluation will be advised by contractual and procurement experts. Is that officers? Are we inviting consultants to be part of this process to provide that expertise? Who would that actually be, is my question, I suppose.
Can we come back to that?
Yeah, that's fine.
As part of there's a point of debate about that.
Okay.
So as it currently is drafted, what we're proposing is that officers, myself, Suzanne, as a legal expert and has got a lot of procurement background, and Sarah Bass, who's our procurement officer internally, would do that.
Yeah.
We're proposing to approach the LGA to see whether they would put an independent person on, but there's another proposal about how we can extend that wider that will come up through the specification process.
Any other comments on the draft specification?
No, on the process. Sorry.
Selection criteria separately.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, okay.
So what I've done on your tables is an amended specification. This is, I think, incorporating the comments that I've had from people over the last 4 or 5 days, and I thank you for the time that you've taken to go through and give some of those points. Chair, if I move through them, there aren't that many. If I go through them at a time, and then if you could holler if you're wanting to raise any particular issues. So the first one in red, and survivors' representatives, obviously when this was first drafted that wasn't part of the process, but I think it obviously says what it is. When we do this, we will insert a link. It's just beyond my technical abilities. We will insert a link to enable people to get to those documents as part of this. The objective of the inquiry, if you were to compare that against what's in the documentation, what we've done is we've just broken it down into 4 bullet points and slightly amended the wording of the final one. Again, that's adopting suggestions from the advisory body, but I think it probably more accurately details in the final bullet point what we would be trying to achieve anyway. again, on the... Sorry.
Are you okay?
Yeah, we're just looking over one point.
Are you happy?
I'll hold if you wish to comment.
It is, yeah, it has been, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we're okay, thank
You're okay,
you.
thank
Yeah.
you. Sorry, carry on.
Moving over the page, stage 1. Again, the first red comment is incorporating the survivors' representatives as part of the process. There is quite an important... The next amendment is quite important. What that clearly says, and I know there's been some unease about the requirement for Cabinet to approve that. We've changed the wording, and now that'll just be reported to Cabinet so that they're aware of it, but it's not subject to their approval in any way. So I think that's something I know has caused some unease prior to this, but I think that hopefully clarifies the situation or makes it clearer what will be done.
So just to confirm, John, so they won't have any influence on the bearing of that process. It's purely observational.
It'll just go back to council, to Cabinet, to note that that's been done,
Okay.
and that we're moving on to the next stage of the process.
Thank you.
Stage 2, that's actually saying the same thing again, but because these stages overlap, it just it's important to make them consistent. Stage 4 is just a typo. In respect of the analysis of the proposed commissioning body against selection criteria, again, this has come from the body. That's a good suggestion. I would suggest in terms of the extra knowledge in respect of actually the prosecution process. So I know that's been something that has come through feedback that survivors are particularly keen is an important part of how we evaluate, or how we, the contractual relationship with the commissioning body. Moving down, the two of these are just to make it read more clearly. There's a comma at the end in the final box. Moving over the page. Don't think I can see anything on that page. And onto the final page. There's one that's been missed, hasn't there? There's a point that's going to be... Do you mind if I raise it then, as I'm on a roll? There is a point that Councillor Lowry raised about the evaluation process. As I say, as it currently drafted, we're suggesting an LGA representative if they'll agree to that. One thing that's come forward is that perhaps people will be uneasy that doesn't give people the assurance that we've done that. It does, I think summarising it, if I'm summarising it wrong, but it still feels a bit behind closed doors if we do that. So one way of addressing that, as Suzanne said, that's quite a strict process that we have to go through. There's a lot of assessment criteria that we have to address. So rather than have perhaps somebody from the survivors reference panel sitting there doing the evaluation, have someone from the survivors reference panel, or two people if you want, observing that process, just so that you have that assurance that it's a proper and robust process that goes through, that's gone through in there. So that was the proposal. Accurately reflects it, hopefully. So members' views are, everyone's views on that will be welcomed.
Do you want us to raise those now, or we're doing summaries?
If you'd like to, because I think that's the first kind of point of debate.
Personally, I agree with you. I think there's too many affiliations with the LGA and potentially the council. I would welcome what I would be perceived a more independent body to be part of the evaluation panel. I certainly would welcome survivors' involvement within that. I think that's absolutely crucial that survivors are part of every process, and there should be absolute transparency in that regard. So are there any other, I suppose, consultants or anybody that has, experience of, I suppose, evaluating inquiries, establishing inquiries that is completely independent of the council?
I'm sure we could find one. I suppose the point is how we then get independence on independence on independence, and actually how far do you reasonably go?
We have appointed external lawyers just to help with some capacity issues. They're in the room today. They're Chris and Henry from Waitmans. We undertook a procurement process to appoint them. They have a lot of experience in dealing with high-profile CSE matters, and I'm happy for one of those. Just suggesting if you want them to be part of the panel, we could. It's just a suggestion.
I don't know what other members feel, but if they've got qualifications within this sector, obviously that they've got that involvement, I would certainly be in support of that level of independence. There would be no conflict of interest in the council, I would assume.
I think for the sake of transparency, they are our lawyers. So
they are our lawyers.
For full disclosure. So I suppose.
Sorry, just for clarity, what exactly are we saying? What are you asking, Nicola?
Just about the evaluation panel on obviously looking at the procurement process. There was obviously Jonathan made the proposal that it would be potentially looking at LGA involvement, local government association. My concern was that wouldn't allow the level of independence I feel we need. I mean, I would certainly support legal representation, but if they have a conflict of interest in obviously representing the council, again, I don't know personally, actually now on reflection, I don't think that would probably be appropriate.
But are you not then comfortable with us then overseeing it? But the way that I described it was like an election. When you have an election, you vote secretly and then you're watched as you're counting the ballots. So that's what we're proposing, that the people who are analysing these tenders are watched.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
In layman's terms.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm saying. As long as there's that extra level of independence, that's certainly what I'm in support of. It was just to see if it was anybody else that would add value to that part of the process as well.
In respect to what you just said, Jonathan, I think that's going to change the recommendations you've got in B.
I'm sure it will.
So we can't agree these recommendations tonight.
No, you can. What we'll do is...
I don't, with all due respect, I don't think if we go down the road of agreeing these recommendations, the likelihood is those will be the recommendations we work upon. I don't think we can agree those recommendations without inserting the change.
I totally agree, but you can amend the recommendations this evening and agree
That's fair
those amended recommendations. So I have got proposed wording should you come to that decision for your consideration tonight.
Any further comments?
Yes, please. On the, I've read through the draft summary and paperwork and consulted survivors and would like to make some amendments. The majority of them Jonathan has just mentioned, but on the last point, we'd like to discuss the last paragraph on page 4 says that the survivors would like to remove the involvement of Telford and Wrekin's Democratic Service Team taking the minutes. The survivors agree to them booking the rooms and providing paperwork and helping in that manner, but they do not agree in them taking the minutes regarding the inquiry.
Chair, if I can make a comment, I absolutely respect the sentiment of that. I think I just have to make clear, I have no doubt in the independence or the abilities of the Democratic Services team to undertake this role, and I think that's an important point for us to make. However, we have said that one of the most important points is the confidence of survivors and other people in the process, and if that is seen to be a barrier, I'm sure we could, one of the things that we could do whilst keeping them having that role would be that we're either live streaming it, in which case there can always be an issue of referring back to the actual live stream or the recording of it, or we have them recorded and therefore there's always that existing thing when you go back, and obviously when minutes are done, the first item of business at the next meeting is to check the accuracy of those minutes. So that's what I would say as a kind of, for you to think about whether or not you want to make that decision as part of the kind of counter argument. But as I say, I respect the position and I understand
what the concern is.
The fact that it's not independent. Telford and Wrekin Council member paid staff will be taking the minutes for an independent inquiry.
Okay. Stephen?
Can I ask?
Yeah.
If there was a second, a duplicating minute taker, would that satisfy what you're asking?
Say that again,
That was
sorry.
independent of this inquiry. If one could be found, a duplicating minute taker, would you accept that?
If we got somebody else that isn't paid by Telford and Wrekin Council.
Yes.
It isn't paid by or doesn't employ them.
Yeah. Isn't paid by, doesn't employ them.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry, I think
Completely independent.
we're going to have to pay them.
Well, it's part of, in my opinion, it's part of the commissioning,
Yes.
part of the commissioning body, that they should be taking the minutes of their own meeting. We shouldn't be involved.
could
When
do
we
that.
when we get this commissioning body in place, we step back.
That would be perfectly doable, I'm sure.
Got it, yeah.
In which case, if you and I can have a chat later, I may know somebody.
Well, we'll go through a competitive process for that, for the sake of the cameras in the room.
Yeah, that's not
Okay, further comments, please. Any further comments?
Are we looking at the whole document, sorry, Chair? or-
This document, yes, at the moment.
I mean, I'm just obviously referencing now, we're on page 7, 4.6. Obviously, that's what we're doing tonight. Members' views are sought on the specification documents. Members are invited to agree that specification be finalised by the monitoring officer in consultation with the chair. Personally, Chair, I think that should go back to the advisory body just to make sure everybody is absolutely satisfied with what has been finalised as part of this evening. Personally, I don't feel the Chair has delegated powers to make that final sign-off. Personally, I would feel more comfortable. I'd be interested to hear members' thoughts on that for us to have final oversight of what's been agreed tonight in the specification document and for it not to be delegated and signed off by the Chair.
On the basis of that would require another meeting. I'd like to hear what others say on that.
Could I respond to that?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I think this is it's a normal process in that clearly the delegation is received on the basis of, you're not changing the spirit of it, but actually what it gives is the ability, if there's a typo or if there's just some clarity that needs to be put in, maybe we can agree that it's on those kinds of things, because otherwise we're having a meeting and I'm coming back and I'm saying, because technically I then say I'd have to remove that space or I'd have to add that apostrophe, and I'm not sure that anyone's going to thank me for calling a meeting for that. So that's the kind of thing, it's just tidying it up, but planning for the process that actually somebody would look at that and say you've changed that and you weren't allowed to. So that's what that provision is in.
Yeah, and I appreciate that technicality, but as Councillor Bentley said, there was a fundamental change, for example, with the LGA removal, which I hope would come forward and be approved as we agreed, but just to make sure that the changes we've agreed tonight do happen, could it not be circulated and at least have a written sign-off by the members of this panel?
That's what I was going to suggest.
So at least everybody is in agreement with what we discussed. There is a lot we are running through tonight, and I just want to make absolutely sure everybody, as part of this advisory group, is comfortable with what's been agreed.
Yeah, I just raised my hand to say, could it with scrutiny and just go it to members for comment?
Yeah.
No need to raise another meeting.
The only thing I need to make clear about that is there are provisions there about then if we do that and somebody's not around, or this will add delay, and as long as you're aware of that, I just want you to be fully cited on all of the implications of these things, and if you agree on that basis, that's fine.
Sorry, I'd rather have a delay than mess the inquiry up.
Yep.
This inquiry is very, very important.
If we agree the specification tonight, there's almost nothing that will be changed when it comes to a final sign-off. There's no.
I think for the confidence of what's just been said, what has just been, and it's been agreed and seconded by Nathan, that can be accommodated.
Okay, members, that's been put in front of you. Are you happy with that? All those in favour? Excellent. Right, thank you very much. Right, that's what we will do. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments on the specification as it stands now? Because if not, I'd just like to move on to the second part of the recommendation, which is to agree that the LGA should be approached. We've had comments on that already. To nominate an appropriately qualified, experienced person.
Sorry, before you go on to that, Councillor Bentley's right. In respect of the first recommendation, you do need something else putting in there as part of it. So what I drafted, agree the monitoring officer will finalise the specification in consultation with all members of the advisory panel.
I think all members would actually cover that. Yeah, I don't know about anybody else. Yeah.
And just for the sake of avoidance of doubt, what I would like to add to that is, and we'll note then that the tender process will continue, will be started as soon as that's done. Just so, you know, as Suzanne's described, just so that for the avoidance of doubt, that, you know, you've agreed it, now we're just going to get on with it. And, you know, that's, if we've got it recorded as a decision, that's clear.
As I can't read your writing, can I ask you to read that out, please, so we can vote on that?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So the proposed recommendation of the advisory body to comment on the draft specification as detailed, or the advisory body agree the draft specification as amended now, and agree that the monitoring officer will finalise the specification in consultation with all members of the advisory panel, and that the panel will note the commencement of the tender process once finalised.
Okay, all those in favour of that? That's pretty unanimous, thank you.
Sorry.
We will now move on to 2.2, which is that members agree that the LGA should be approached to nominate an appropriately qualified, experienced person to sit on the panel that evaluates bids to provide independent challenge and assurance of good process.
Can I add something to that as well?
Sure, yeah.
And that a survivor's representative be invited to observe the evaluation process.
Just one member. Why can't we all be there if we want to?
Do you all need to be there? Do you feel you all
We are a body, yeah, so I think, yeah.
Comments, members?
I'm comfortable with that. Comfortable.
Part of this process.
Yeah, sure.
So these tender documents will contain commercially sensitive information, so you will be required to sign a confidentiality agreement if you're involved in it.
Okay.
We'll just get a bigger room.
Yeah.
There's only 4 of us.
Okay.
Again, a vote just to show that, show of hands to show we're comfortable with that. Yeah. Lovely. Fine. That's good. Thank you. Right then, comments on, please, on or do you need? Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, we're talking about that the LGA should be approached. Is everyone happy with that?
Well, I think Councillor Nicola Lowry has already mentioned her reservations with regards to that, and given some of what is written in here, I think we should be looking at something that has a broader understanding of this process, therefore maybe the Law Society or something like that.
Chair, I think if I explain, the LGA is a broad kind of church of an organisation, really. So what it has is it then has what they call them associate members. So people with relevant expertise who've worked in the area, who they would put forward for this. So they're not employed by the LGA. They're just they're consultants who the LGA will be aware of and will pull together. So these would be the great and the good of this kind of area of experience. What I could do is if the LGA are approached and they nominate someone, I could send details round, you know, to give you some assurance. You know, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most important things about this is giving you confidence and assurance of the transparency of the process. So actually then asking them to provide details of who this person that they've suggested is, and then if there are any you've got to remember that, you know, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. You know, if there are significant reservations, and if we could agree that there have to be significant reservations, that then these can be raised. But otherwise, they're just noted. As for the process that we just talked about actually, you're aware of it. You might have a particular issue with someone, but as I say, would that be a way to deal with that?
I would certainly be in support of that, Chair. I think, and I was under the understanding it would be someone that would be affiliated with the LGA. So if they are independent of the LGA, a consultant, an expert in this field, I would just be very much in favour of those profiles being shared with members. So the advisory group is happy with the level of independence and equally expertise of those individuals to make sure they are appropriate for this process.
Everybody happy with that? Yeah. Any more comments? Otherwise, I'll ask Jan to revise the recommendation slightly. I think you might need to. And then once read out, we will vote on it. Further comments? No? Okay. Okay, you happy? Yeah. So if you would like to just read that out again, please, because I can't read your writing over my shoulder.
Well, I haven't planned this one, so I'm making this up as we go along.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, make it.
What I suggest is that we put an extra recommendation in that any person proposed by the LGA, the details of any person proposed by the LGA be circulated, and what do we say? Agreement not unreasonably withheld by members of the advisory body.
Yeah, so we have the members of the advisory body have to approve that essentially.
Well, or you've got to have a good reason to object.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
Rather than just I object.
Does that also include me? Because I can usually find reasons, can't I?
Of course.
You don't have to, though.
Could we insert, Jonathan, for maybe the purposes of reassurance of independence in there, so to agree that the LGA should be approached to nominate an appropriately independent and qualified and experienced person, just to add that.
Happy with that?
Just to make sure it's right.
You happy with that?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so that is the recommendation that we have in front of us. It does enable us to move towards procurement, which is...
Sorry, Chair, can I just confirm we haven't rewritten that last paragraph?
Regarding the minutes?
We haven't done anything about taking that out.
Okay, can we make a decision on the minutes themselves? This is the last paragraph here.
Yeah.
So what would you like it to say?
I'd like the removal of where it says meetings will be supported by the Democratic Service Team who will organise meetings, provide papers.
We will organise meetings and provide papers, and we will make sure that the minute-taking provisions are included in the contractual provisions for us through the commissioning process.
So two bodies taking the minutes, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we won't have two bodies.
No, it's going to be
So
part
there'll be
of,
no democratic services, is that what you...
No democratic services.
We're
so
duplicating if we do that. So.
Yeah, we're taking that out and we're putting it into the commissioning bit.
Comfortable with that? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Members?
Yes. But
Happy?
this will be part of what's circulated back to everyone for everyone to note. This particular paragraph that Yvonne's referring to. Sorry, I'm just making sure, what we agreed at the very start will be circulated back to members to agree. Is this part of what will be sent back? Do you see what I mean?
If we're asking
There's
the
lots of different
commissioning
parts.
body to take minutes, maybe we should put that paragraph in the specification because it's part of their remit.
I can support that.
So
Okay.
as part of that, we will add a paragraph that provides for that as part of the commissioning
Are
body.
you going to recirculate the rework of this
Yes.
anyway?
And we'll all have
Yes, you will
a
get it,
copy,
yes.
yeah?
You
We'll
will
have
get
a
a
copy.
copy, yes.
We'll read through it, agree it.
Well, you're agreeing it tonight,
Yeah, no, but
but you can
the
take issue with it
rewrite
if it doesn't accurately reflect what you
Yes.
think has been agreed.
Yes.
Okay, so we have that revised recommendation. Are we happy with it? All those in favour? Carried unanimously again. So we are really at a point where our business this evening is done. Thank you very much for your efforts. The next stages will be even more intense, I think, for survivors and their families, but you're very welcome now that you're part of this. So thanks everybody for their input tonight. Meeting is closed.